This video is about the assembly of my little Harbor Freight trencher. Everything's unpacked and sitting out, and there really weren't any instructions. So this is the way that I put everything together. I figured I'd share with you. Plan on spending probably at least 2 to 2.5 hours to put everything together. First thing I did was there was a little bag with four short bolts and washers, and the first thing that I had to do was to mount the seat onto the pedestal. And that's really just a simple job of just lining up the threaded fasteners in the bottom of the seat with the holes in the base plate there, and just insert the screws and tighten them down until they're good and snug. That was where I decided to start. Like I said, I didn't really see any good instructions of exactly how to do this, so this is how I put mine together. And it really did turn out to be quite a simple task putting this unit together. Everything was fairly easy to assemble. Everything lined up properly and had all the proper fasteners and whatnot. So it turned out to be a real quick and easy job. And I guess the first thing I really did was just slide these stabilizers. And you use there's 3 length pins. There's a short one, a medium length one, and a long one. And for these, you use the medium length pin. And there's just a little snap clip that goes on the bottom of it. Then I slid the axles in place. And the axles actually used the 2 shorter pins that were supplied. Then there's the little extension for the outriggers there that go on, and they also use the medium length pin when you install them. Then there are 2 other pins that are longer length, and they actually go in to lock the boom in place. The next thing I did was there were some mounting bolts in those 4 holes that you see there for mounting the valve body on. So you just remove those bolts and then go back and line all the holes up and reassemble them and tighten them. This part of the assembly would have been nice to have an extra hand to hold on things, but it was doable, you know, with one person. So and everything lined up really good, and all the lines were attached. Most of the lines were attached to it, so there are only a couple of lines to be hooked up later. And it was real nice the way they had this set up, that it took very little hardware to assemble everything, and that these bolts actually were right there in the mounting holes to start out with, so you didn't have to go hunting for anything. So just a matter of taking and snugging up those bolts. Then I slipped in the other outrigger extension there on the back side of it. All the time I was working on this, I had this up in the air on my Presto lift, so I could go up and down a little bit to make it a little bit easier to access everything. So that was just another matter of us dropping a pin in place. And there are a couple of hoses that are sticking up from underneath that go to the turn cylinder and the pump that actually have to be hooked up later. But there's some really good numbering on everything, so it makes it easy. Then I got out the coupler to go in the front. There was the other bag of hardware that had 3 bolts in it. There were 2 shorter bolts that go through sideways. And then there was also a safety chain. Now, they tell you don't tow this thing on the highway, so I don't know why it really needs a safety chain. But I figured I'd install it anyway. So there's 1 longer bolt in that bag that actually has an oversized nut on it, and a washer, and then a lock nut. So what I did is I found the middle of the safety chain, and I put the longer bolt down through the hole. Then to keep the chain, give it a little bit of room to be able to tighten everything, I slid that bigger nut on that they give you for a spacer, I guess it is. And then after that, I just put on the washer on the bottom and the lock nut, and then tightened everything up. And this coupler does take a 1 7/8 trailer hitch ball. I thought it might have been a 2-inch one, but no, it turned out it's a 1 7/8. So you may want to make sure that whatever you're going to tow it with, you have a one of the smaller 1 7/8 balls on it. So then it was just a matter of going back and tightening up all the nuts and bolts on there, and they're lock nuts, so you just have to snug them up good. Then I decided it was time to put the wheels on. And the axles are actually in really good shape, and they were real clean, and everything was greased and whatnot. So I just took and put a little bit of red grease on everything, and a little bit of extra grease in the bearings, just to give it a little bit extra. And then it was just a matter of taking off that castle nut that comes on them. And on the one wheel hub, I had to actually tap the seal in a little bit further. The seal was not seated squarely with the rim, so you may want to just check the seals before you put it on. And then it's just a matter of sliding that rear bearing on the axle, and then putting the outer bearing in place. And then there's a washer that goes in there. Now this washer that came with them had a really big hole in it. It kind of flops around. It's really loose in there, but when I tighten the nut up, everything, you can see me fiddling with it because it's so loose, but when I tighten it up, everything seemed to pull down on it and whatnot. So just tighten it up, and then just back it off a little bit and get it so that you can get the cotter pin in the bag. So get it so you can get the cotter pin through the holes, through the cutouts in the nut, just like a standard wheel bearing. And then just put the cotter pin in and bend it over. And there are some caps that go on the outside. Now the caps were pretty beat up for some reason from shipping. I guess it was from just kind of the wheels beating together. Yeah, you can see they're all kind of beat up, but that was a real easy thing. It went together pretty simply. The wheels, and then I did the other wheel on the back. Here's doing the back wheel. And the wheels actually don't run all that true when you turn them. They do have a lot of run out in them. So I'm guessing that's probably why they tell you don't go over 30 miles an hour with it. Probably if you're going to drive it down the highway a lot, you need better hubs. Then I went back over to the hydraulics, and you see there's little numbers on everything there, and there's plugs in all the hydraulic fittings. It looks like they put this whole thing together and tested it, and you have to be careful because you will get hydraulic oil that comes dripping out of some of these fittings when you hook them up. So you just have to remove the numbered caps and look at the little numbered tag on the hose, and just mate 5 to 5 and 6 to 6 and so forth. Now there's the two fittings, two hoses that go down to the cylinder that's on the frame for turning the boom from side to side. And then there's a feed line from the hydraulic pump that goes on the other side, and then there's a return line to the hydraulic tank that goes on there too. So basically down underneath there you just have 4 connections to make, and it just takes a second. They all have good O-ring seals on them, so it's just a matter of putting them together and then just snug them up. Everything was kept nice and clean by them putting these little plastic plugs in them. And I must say, you know, for something that came from Harbor Freight, kind of a lower cost Chinese item, the quality and finish of all these hoses is really great. The fittings are all really nice. All the threads are really smooth, and the O-rings all seal really good. So I'm real happy with the quality on these hydraulic parts that they used. Then after you get them all snugged up, I had the hydraulic lines just laying on the side, and you just have to sort of snake them out in front of the valve body there. There's a big opening that goes out to the boom, And I guess looking at it this way, it's on the right side of the boom. There's a ring to put the hoses through eventually. So I just kind of snaked them through a pair at a time and twisted them and let them fall into place. And that was just took a couple seconds there. And then once you get these in place, I kind of left everything hanging loose until I had to hide all the cylinders moving and whatnot, just to see what was going to rub before clamping everything down. So there you see that little ring to hold them all. And I think in the future I may put some kind of a piece of rubber around there or something, just to protect the hoses a little bit, because there is a lot of rubbing when the boom turns side to side. So over time I think it could be a problem area. But it's real nice. I mean, they did put that in place there, and it holds the hoses together real nice, and it does a good job. And I think what I'll probably do in the long run is I'll probably just take it and run it for maybe 30 or 40 hours, and then just go back through and look at all the hoses, see if there's any wear spots or anything, and pull off like the cover on the swing cylinder and everything where the hoses are kind of rubbing in there, and just see if I see any signs of wear. With the hoses in and whatnot, I just had to turn it sideways in my garage so I could get the boom on, and I just rolled it around on the lift. And then I dropped it down. If you have more room to work, you won't have to move it around and turn it, but that's kind of limited with the space that I have. So this unit is probably about 16 feet overall length when it's assembled, and maybe about 5 feet wide, so you really need a pretty good sized spot to put it together. So I just dropped it down on the floor now and got the lift out of the way, and then I decided to go on to the installing the boom parts. Now the boom pins are just kind of like a bushing in with a shaft in the middle of it, and there's really no way to get grease down into the center of the behind that bushing. I took some of that red grease and I just tried to pack it in there like a bearing to get some back in there, but I just don't know how the grease is going to get there in the future. So then the next thing you have to do is take that first half of the boom, the longer piece there, and the pins are in it. You just take the pin out, and like I said, I put a little grease on it, and then just get the holes lined up, and it's a pretty good fit on there. And then you got to fiddle with it till everything lines up, and then just drive the pin in, and there's a cotter pin that you have to put back in once it goes through, just to keep it in place. Now once you get this whole thing assembled, there are grease fittings that you have to grease on there, but that's later on once it's all together. So I got the bottom pin, and then you have to mount that top cylinder, and all the cotter pins are in the pins already, so you don't have to go hunting for them either. They're just spread open a little bit, so you just pull them out and use them, so it's real easy to find. Now to get that cylinder lined up, what I had to do is I used that lift that I've got, but you may just need somebody to pick that piece of the boom up to the correct angle so that you can get the pin in the cylinder. I guess you could take the fittings off the cylinder and let the oil leak out and move that, but the easiest way was to bring the boom up until everything lined up and the pin would slide right in. Now, all these pins that hold the cylinder in, and some of the other pivot pins, have a flush type grease joint in them that you have to get there's a special grease gun, like a needle type fitting, or needle type point that you can stuff in there to get the grease in. So I just wanted to let you know that you're going to need a special adapter to get grease in some of these like cylinder pins and whatnot. So then once you get the pins in, just remember to go back and throw the cotter pins in, and there you see it, the bottom one's in. So now what I decided to do is I decided to throw the 2 hoses on that one, because I wanted to let this down to put the other the end of the boom on, and I figured that if I did it without the hoses on, that the oil would probably blow those little plastic caps off and come squirting out. So they use the same fittings on this end of the hose. There's a like a tapered fitting with a O-ring on it, and for some reason most of the hardware on this actually used inch-size wrenches too, which I've never seen with a Harbor Freight type build. But yeah, there was a lot of hardware like 3/8 nuts and stuff like that that actually used inch wrenches. So they have the same numbering system on the hoses here. If you look, there's a little white ring on each hose. That's just a like a piece of tape with a number on it, and then there's a cap on each of the fittings that has a number on it. So really, it's basically impossible to get this stuff mixed up the way they've set it up. So you just have to put those 2 fittings together and snug them up. And then I decided to just let that down and get ready to put the end of the boom on. Kind of the same thing. You have the pin with the bushings to mount it together, and it's just a matter of getting everything lined up. This end's a little bit heavier than the other one, so you're gonna have to work a little bit. And like I said, I tried to squeeze some red grease down in between that sleeve and the pin. So it goes in the same as that first pin that you put the first part of the boom on with. So you just kind of pound the pin through, and then put the cotter pin in and bend it over to hold the pin in place. And then next you have to mount the end of that cylinder on there, and I got pretty lucky with getting that lined up the first time. So just a matter of driving that pin through and putting the cotter pin back in, and then just bending the end so it can't pull out. And pretty much basically the boom is entirely assembled now. So then you can see some oil dripping out of the hoses there. But so then you just have to go back through and put the rest of the hoses on. And like I said before, everything has a number on it, so it would be kind of impossible to get it wrong, it seems like, between the numbers and the length of the hose. So basically, first I did the fittings on the cylinder, the second cylinder on the boom, that center one, and just the same fittings as they've used throughout it. So just make sure that everything's clean, which it was on mine, and then just put them together and snug them up with a wrench. And like I just let them hang off the side for now. Later on we'll go back and we'll put them in the holders for them. Now the hoses for the elastic end on the boom, they have to come up through that underneath the end of the previous cylinder and wrap up through that knuckle there, and then they just attach like all the other ones. And I must say, so far I am impressed with the overall quality of the build of everything, and from what it looks like, the strength of everything also. It seems to be one of the better built items that I've purchased from Harbor Freight. And there you have it. I just left those hoses hang for now. And I went back and getting ready to start it up. And first thing I did is I put in I use 93 octane gas in all my small engines. So I filled it up. I think it holds about a gallon of gas. And then you have to put oil in the engine. Now I put 1030 in there. It said you could use 30 weight or 1030 for the temperatures, and I put in some 1030, and it wound up taking basically a whole quart of oil to fill it up. So then I had to run the tractor supply before this thing came, so I picked up 5 gallons of hydraulic fluid at Tractor Supply. So it was time to fill up the hydraulic tank. Now they had this super track stuff on sale for like $19.99 for 5 gallons. So I figured, seeing how I'll probably just break it in for maybe 20 or 30 hours and drain it out, I figured I'd start with this stuff to try it out. Seeing how the price was sold though, and they said it was good stuff. So it wound up taking, I put about 4 gallons in, but once I bled everything out, I had to go back and put another gallon in, so it took about 4.5 gallons. Then I went to start the engine. I pulled the cord on it to start it, and it started before the cord was halfway out. I've never seen anything start that fast. Then once you get the engine running, what they say is just exercise all the cylinders to get any air out of the lines. So I just ran all the movements in and out. Everything seemed to go fairly smoothly, and really didn't seem to be much air. I think they had everything all filled with hydraulic fluid from when they tested it, so that went good. So these are the first. This is the first movements from the machine, and I just had the engine running a little bit above idle because they said don't run it wide open for the first 20 hours. So I just sat there for a couple minutes and let it run and just exercised everything to make sure all of the air was out of the system. Then I went back later and I checked the hydraulic tank, and I was able to get a little more oil in it. Okay, so now that I knew where all the hoses were going to be moving and what lengths I was going to need, I went back, and there's some really nice little holders built onto the side of the boom. And you start with the top 2 hoses that wind up through up through that knuckle, and you get them in place, and just they're sandwiched between like a formed rubber clamp and then a rubber gasket on the top with a metal plate to hold everything down. So looks like that should keep the hoses in place good without much wear in the long run. So I just started with that top clamp. You work your way down with the first 2 hoses. Then you go down to the next clamp, and that's got 3 slots in it. So what you do is you pick up the top hose from that center cylinder in there, and try to keep the hoses kind of in line with the way that they go, so that they're not twisted or anything, and they lay kind of nice and flat. So it's just got to loosen up the 2 bolts on it, get that loose enough so you can open the cover up and pull back the rubber. And then the hoses actually fit in there nice and snugly. And once you get them in, just flip it back up around. The rubber does give you a little problem. Get everything lined up where you want it, and then just tighten the bolts down. Now these were the only metric bolts that I ran into on the machine. It's funny, everything else took inch wrenches, but these the 6 bolts on these 3 clamps were actually metric. So there's what it looks like with the clamps in. You go down, you get the next clamp picks up the 4 hoses. As you can see, the assembly was really a very easy job. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And my next video should be trying it out. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe.